Hey gamers, we're back with another episode of Let's Create a Competitive Card Game. In this episode, we will be coming up with some new cards. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so last episode we saw the final images for the Warrior and the Magician class cards. And a couple episodes before that, we looked at the new render for the Cleric class card. So on Monday, we should have the final version of the Cleric class card. So in this episode, what I want to do is come up with some new cards or some more cards, as I do want to keep a constant flow of card ideas going to the artist. That way she can turn out cards or art fairly quick. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and hop over to Excel. Alright, so we are over in Excel with our card spreadsheet. So far we only have four actual card ideas down for 4 of the relics. Now I did put numbers here, as for now I'm just going to call the cards, I'm going to have their names be numbers until I come up with actual names. Now I am starting at 12, as there are some other ideas that I did send over to the artist. So I sent her a few more ideas for some class cards, and I also sent her some ideas for some different type of cards. So what we're going to do today is we'll go ahead and try to maybe finish up the relics. So let's go ahead. This relic here is supposed to be a mind relic. So the ideas behind relics is that they stay on the field, they stay in play and provide some lasting effect. Now, relics come from outside of the now or from outside of this moment, so they should have a decent amount of power. So the way Mind plays is that it likes to make things disappear, aka it likes to do bounce effects. So their cards will mainly have some effect to bounce something from the field. So let's think of a simple bounce effect. And the most simplest one I can think of is put a card from play into its owner's hand. So let's go with that. And this is pretty generic. So what I want to do is make it non-generic. So this is a relic, and it will stay in play until it is destroyed or removed from play. So let's go ahead and say once per turn, as it could be pretty OP if it was multiple times per turn. Let's say you may. Alright, so once per turn you may put a card from play into the owner's hand. Now, and let's do correct wording. Now this can get pretty powerful if you're constantly just putting cards from your opponent's hand or from your opponent's play area into their hand. I can see this getting out of control. So let's say something like that player may play a different card of the same type with an equal, or let's say equal or less cost for free or something like that. So what did I say? Let's say that player. Let's say a different card. Alright, so that player may play a different card of the same type with equal or less cost for free. So I think this is pretty balanced, as if you will get you have the potential to get a +1 if your opponent doesn't have a card of the same type and equal or less cost. So say you bounce an opponent's, let's say you bounce one of their followers that costs, let's just say 4, and if they don't have another follower in their hand, then they can't play a card. If they do have more followers, but they're a greater cost, and they can't play a card for free. So I think this is pretty balanced, that effect at least. And there will be a cost-benefit analysis with all the effects that will fine-tune some of these effects. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come up with the effects, and if there's enough time in this episode, I'll come up with the art descriptions. So that is one effect, and let's think of another bounce effect. How about something that I'm thinking of, maybe these, let's say these two relics work in parallel. So if you can get them both out, maybe you should get a +1. So as it is, this effect right here is a possible +1. So let's make another effect that kind of works off of this, that is a +1. And the only thing I can think of is, so this effect is bouncing a card and they maybe can play one, and if they do, then it's not really a minus. Or let's say it's -1/2 for them. So how about an effect that says whenever, say, your opponent puts a card from play into their hand, they have to bounce another card. Okay, so let's say that. Let's say your opponent, let's say, must return a card. No, so from play, let's say to their, hand. Each time any of their cards are removed from the hand, or from play. And I'm gonna have to maybe work on this wording, because the idea isn't when somebody, say, removes one of your cards from play, is if you play Yu-Gi-Oh, let's say if they banish one of your cards, the idea is more of if they maybe send your card to the discard pile, if they return it to your hand whenever it leaves the play area. Now, looking at this, I can tell this can also maybe be a little OP, but you know what? Yeah, this can maybe get a little bit OP, so how about this? Let's say not including this card's effect. As if this card was to bounce a card or make them return a card, then this effect would keep going off, and that's not the actual intention. And let's restrict this even more. Each time any of their cards are, let's say, returned from the play area to their hand. Or returned to their hand from the play area. I think that's a better overall balanced effect. Alright, so now let's think a power relic. So power will be the warriors. Let's just say they'll be warriors. And they're all about maybe inflicting damage. So, okay, here's an idea. How about whenever a card does damage, then it increases that amount of damage by 1. I think that's a pretty standard effect, so let's do that. Let's say whenever you do damage to a card. Alright, whenever you deal damage to a card, increase the amount by 1. So, okay, this is going to need to be reworded as the idea isn't, say, if you're in the middle of combat and you inflict damage to a card, the idea isn't that you inflict one more, it's more of, say, with life. So if you attack your opponent and you deal damage to them, they take an extra 1 point. Or if you attack one of their cards with life, that card loses another point. So that is the idea behind that effect. Alright, now let's see, what else can we give power? How about when one of your cards is destroyed, you can increase another card's attack by 1. Yeah, let's try that. So let's see, whenever, let's say a follower you control, let's say is destroyed. Let's say a power, let's call it a power token. And let's say power tokens increase a card's attack by 1. Alright, so that is a decent effect. Now, let's go with life. So the idea behind this, behind life is that, or actually behind clerics, is that they like to increase life. So they're going for that max life win. So, what should I do? Let's say something like, you can send a card, maybe you can send a card you control to the discard pile to gain, let's say, some amount of life. And it is a relic, so yeah, let's say once per turn. So I do think a lot of relics are maybe going to say once per turn for now. Till maybe I think of a better effect for them. And let's restrict it to your turn. Let's say you may send a card you control to the discard. Let's say to gain life equal to something. Equal to, let's say, cards. Let's say attack or defense. As they are going for the max life win condition. So I do want to have cards that can make you gain a lot of life. Now, with that in mind, now this might be sidetracking, but there are some games where if there isn't a winner by the time runs out, then the player with the most life wins the game. And I think that works in some of those games as not really a certain, let's say, card type is specifically designed to maybe gain life. Like a lot of different cards have access to that. Now, in this game, if say only players are focused on gaining life, then I'm not sure how balanced it will be if clerics can gain life extremely fast or gain life faster than damage can be done to them, because by default they are at an advantage already going into the match, as they have cards that can gain life. So yeah, I might have to think about how to balance this out, the life gain win condition and the life reduction win conditions. Okay, so back to the relics. So one more relic. Let's say, what should I say? So they do have to gain life. Maybe, how about each time they draw a card, they gain some amount of life. Let's say a card or cards. Let's say gain, let's just say 2 for now. So yeah, each time you draw a card, you gain 2 life. So I think that is pretty fair, as they do have a really long way to go to winning the game by life gain. Alright, so I think that will be, or this will be all the cards we create for this episode, and I'm trying to think of maybe some art descriptions, and let's think. Yeah, I can't really think of any descriptions for these at the moment. So we're gonna go ahead and end the episode here, and in the next episode, I will have some descriptions already in mind, and I'll fill them in between episodes. So that way, next episode we can maybe start on the town of cards, and I'll go over the descriptions that I come up with. As I don't really want to come up with descriptions on the spot, I want to maybe think about some of these descriptions. Alright, so if you like these episodes, be sure to like, subscribe, and all of that other good stuff. Thanks.